Shields with you this morning, just down the street from our American Metal Roof studio here in the state capitol. We're in the Gillespie Group Stadium District building, and the Capitol building is right down the street. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush is here. He's going to meet with Republican leaders and testify about how he thinks states should change how they approach education. He founded the Foundation for Excellence in Education after he left office in 2008. And think of it, he was the first Republican ever to serve consecutive terms as the governor of Florida and was term limited out. So he will meet with Governor Rick Snyder, State Superintendent of Schools Mike Flanagan, and some House and Senate GOP leaders. They're going to have a news conference and discuss education improvements. He in Florida he founded the very first charter school there, had a successful business career. You know, he graduated from the University of Texas in 2.5 years with good grades. I mean, this guy knows a lot about education, obviously very smart, and a lot of people thought he ought to run for president. He keeps saying no, 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 at least at the moment. But with us here in our Gillespie Group American Metal Roofs studio, we're happy to welcome Brian Bodrick. He is the Executive Director of the Michigan Association of Non-Public Schools, and you'll be with Governor Bush this morning, as I understand it.
Good morning. Yes, I will. I plan to attend the hearing before the House and Senate Education Committee this morning at 8:30.
Is there something he can say that would affect the future of education reform in Michigan? I mean, those legislators are going to be listening closely, right?
Yeah, I hope so. We hope that they are listening closely, and I think that the model that he set up in Florida would be something that they really need to hear, Michael Patrick. The whole concept of school choice is something that Florida has really been innovative and been a leader on in this country, and it's something that here in Michigan we're prevented from doing because of some restrictive language in our state constitution, especially with respect to private school choice. And so the models that he will talk about this morning, I think, are great models for our state to look at. But in order to look at them, you have to look at the state constitution and hopefully amend that onerous language that's in there that prohibits any aid to non-public schools.
He promoted school of choice vouchers, as I understand it, in Florida. Jeb Bush did.
That's right.
How'd that work out?
Well, I think it's working out. I mean, it remains to be seen. It's a relatively new program, as is a tax credit program, so it remains to be seen. But what it does is it gives parents choice. And if you're a child in the 4th grade someplace and your school is not educating you, it's failing to educate you, your parents are going to want some choice or some opportunity. And if you're in an economic circumstance and you can't afford to pay a tuition to go to a private school, whether it be a faith-based school or otherwise, the state has some obligation to educate you, and that is a tax credit program or a voucher program or something that like that is beneficial to those students so that they can receive the education that they so richly deserve.
So that student could then therefore leave the public school that they're in whatever city it is and go to a private school with some sort of voucher?
That's my understanding. That's correct. Right. You would have some money that would flow to the parent in school to allow that student then to attend a
We
private
could
school.
presume then that the schools with the better teachers or the better reputation of teaching would get a lot of action, right?
I would think so, yeah. Yeah, of course they would, sure. And those schools, deservedly should have students come in there, and they're providing that service to the state as well as to the families and children, and that those students then perform well and move on to perform well throughout their high school and college careers.
Are private school teachers or Catholic school teachers or any sort of religious schools paid markedly more than public school teachers?
No. In fact, they're mostly paid less, especially in the faith-based religious schools that our organization represents. I think that most of our schools try to target teacher salaries at 80 to 90% of what a public school teacher would make. Some reach that mark, some are unable to reach that mark, but they are across the board would be paid less than the public school counterparts.
And sometimes outperform the public school teachers then?
Yeah, I would say, well, I don't want to say they outperform the teachers. I think the students in a lot of cases will do better in testing, will outperform or at many public schools, or they're about even, I guess, in some instances, and in some instances better. I think there's a lot of reasons why. There's parental involvement in the non-public schools. I think there's a style of managing a school that's site-based that makes it a little bit easier. Decisions can be made easier at a private school. There are more opportunities for innovation at private schools, at faith-based schools. So there's a lot of reasons why. I think the largest reason why is a dedicated staffs at our non-public schools, dedicated teachers, dedicated principals, and dedicated parents. Parents
Well,
are making that choice.
If
And
they're paying for the education, right, they're more likely to probably be involved and make sure it works.
that's correct.
Fair to say?
That's fair to say, yes.
Governor Bush, one of the things he did in Florida, too, is he mandated standardized testing and refused to raise taxes for education. So he enacted reform without raising taxes. That's something that Governor Snyder is also trying to do here in Michigan.
That's correct. And Governor Snyder has had a number of pieces of legislation introduced. Many of them have to do with teacher tenure, step increases, health care, premium contributions to be made by public employees, including school employees. They all may be great issues that will hopefully impact students, but they don't really have that direct impact that we were looking for students, that we think a school choice model would have a direct impact on students and a direct impact on learning. If you're a fourth grader, and I've used this example many times, if you're a fourth grader and you're in a struggling school district and your school is not educating you, probably don't really care too much whether or not your teacher is going to get a step increase the following year because they're engaged in a labor dispute. What really is important is, can I get an education? And so far, Governor Snyder hasn't addressed that issue. The legislature won't address that issue, has not addressed that issue. We're hopeful today with former Governor Bush's appearance here that it'll be some sort of an impetus to say, hey, we can do these reforms, and they may have some merit, but the real reform that needs to occur is to open up competition and to open up choice for all students in the state.
Well, lest you think we're the only state going through this sort of thing, Governor Bush was in Idaho, I think this week even, very recently though. They have new education laws that are going to limit union bargaining rights, introduce teacher merit pay, and shift money from salaries into classroom technology.
Right.
We're not alone in these things.
We're not. And in fact, but we are alone in a state that does not have we're not alone, but we're one of the states that does not have true school choice. We have some limited school choice in this state where you can go to a charter school or public schools of choice if the districts agree that you can move between districts, but we don't have private school choice. And if you look around the country, a number of states, 16 right now, have some form of private school choice, whether it's in the form of a tax credit or a voucher. Those states, many of them are surrounding us here in Michigan. So we have Indiana has opportunities, Wisconsin has opportunities, Ohio has opportunities. We're competing with these states for employers, for jobs, and I think we can talk about, we have had a great conversations in the state about the tax structure and revising the tax structure. But I would submit to you that businesses, while tax structure is important, they're coming into states where there is a strong education system. And they're going to go to a state where they can get their children educated, their employees' children educated. I don't know whether or not they really care whether it's a public school or a private school. They want a solid, strong education.
Real quickly, what do you make of this? The MEA president, Ira Salters, was asked by MERS News what she thinks of the governor's reform plan. Quote, not much, end quote. And she says that the lawmakers are dumping on teachers and putting those teachers, she's just putting bad stuff on those teachers in order to keep their friends in high places.
Right. Well, you know, the governor's reform message, he was elected, almost by a landslide by the state of Michigan. So I'm not going to criticize the governor's reform message. I just think it's incomplete.
Thank you very much
for being here. It needs to have
for
a private
being here.
school element to
Say
it.
hi to Governor Bush for us.
Okay, we will.
Beautiful
Thank you.
and Gary.